Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Conversations with Vijeet. As you know, I interview batchmates of mine who pursued sports management from Deakin University, Melbourne. They are from the batches of 2017 and 18. For this episode, I've got Kunal Sheth with me. Hi Kunal, how are you?
Hey Vijeet, nice to hear from you. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm well. So Kunal, ready for this?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so I'll begin with the first question. So Kunal, how did you think of doing sports management? How did you come to know of it, and how did you choose Deakin?
Yeah, too easy. So I was involved like a lot of Indians playing sport, growing up on sport. I played a lot of competitive sports at the state level, like cricket and tennis, etc. And when I did my bachelor's, I chose a university where I could still work or play sport. So my undergrad degree, my college days were over by about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then from there, I used to go and coach and actually work at a tennis center where I used to play before. Uh, from there, within the first year, I started learning about the business of sport, and I got intrigued by it. And that's when my research started in terms of what I want to do with that. That's when Deakin was one of the options, along with Ohio State as well. These were my first two options, and at that time, I think uh, Deakin was number one. I just don't remember when we joined uni in 2015. So that's the reason Deakin was chosen at the end of the day.
Okay. So, tell me about the visa process. Did you face any issues with that? And when you got to Melbourne, like just the whole experience of it?
Yeah, sure. Visa, the whole process, honestly, my life was made a lot easier with IDP. Uh, just they took half of my burden off my shoulders and did a lot of work for me. Yes, we had to do the groundwork in terms of paperwork, which you need to do for any institution or any even if a tourist visa, the paperwork and the hard work needs to be done by you. But the process as such, they've taken the bulk off, which was really great for me. Uh, in terms of when it came, it was only 4 days before orientation week, and I was very sure in my mind that I wanted to be there for a week. Just speaking to people in Australia before, and they told me the importance of being there for a week, especially because we were yes, according to Indian study times, we were going at the right time, but in fact for Australia we were going mid year. So I wanted to get in early and just start knowing people there, understanding. And fortunately, my visa came 3 days before a week started. So I made it in time, unlike a lot of people I know who couldn't make it even after the uni started for a week or so. So it was a great experience. My first few days wasn't great, to be honest. I stayed at rest because I didn't have anyone in Melbourne. I didn't know a soul who was going to Melbourne. So my whole prerogative was to get settled in quickly. Uh, I took accommodation on Deakin Rest for the first 3 months. But my first day, something I'll never forget. It was absolutely horrible. I have left Bangalore, India, a very populous city in a country, to a place where it was 5 degrees and raining the day I arrived. A van picked me up from the airport, dropped me to this building, and there was no one in the building except one receptionist, who I eventually shared my lunches and dinners with for the first 4 5 days because most of the res was empty because everyone had gone back home. So that's how my journey at Deakin and Rest started.
Next one, Kunal. So just tell me about the course. Like, how was your experience of doing the course for 2 years? What did you do as part-time work? And yeah, how was the whole experience of it?
Yeah, sure. Course, I think overall, the orientation week helped a lot. Just meeting people, just figuring out what the course map for the 2 years is going to be. I think for me and for a lot of people, it was a bit shocking to know that we've gone in July and by November to Feb, it's optional if you want to study or not.
Yeah.
But it also excited a lot of us in terms of that we could work. That's what was told to us, that that's a semester where you guys should go and try to find work in the industry, which was exciting at the same time. So in terms of mapping my course out, I think we were one of the initial batches where there wasn't too much flexibility what we see today in terms of what people are doing today. We had a rigid structure almost with a few things we could choose from, in a way which made my life easier because I didn't have too many options to choose from. So I actually enjoyed what was part of the core subjects, and the electives were pretty. I went towards the digital marketing, athlete management side of things. So my course structure for 2 years was pretty planned out. And in my mind, just starting to understand the Australian sports calendar a bit, I gave myself the October to Feb window where I actually wanted to work and see what I could do in terms of getting that early experience on. So my uni was pretty straightforward. First semester was hard settling in terms of what is the expectation from a foreign university in terms of assignments, in terms of the exams or whatever the contributions to class was. But at the same time, having uni only for 18 hours or 20 hours a week really helped in understanding the city and the people, the sports culture. That really helped, which prompted me to actually go in December to Brisbane to volunteer. Even though it was a completely all expense on me, I was volunteering there. That experience changed a lot of things for me in terms of getting my foot in the door in the Australian sporting system. Uh, just meeting people there, how they work, what type of work is there, and yes, you are going from a professional mindset, but the sports fan in you is still crazy to see a lot of superstars in facial distance with one another was absolutely mind-boggling for me as a 21-year-old who had come to Australia. So that's how the whole first 6 months started, and then from there on, I was fortunate enough living at Res. I made a few connections at the Deakin University gym as well, where I started working as a customer service officer and a referee for the sports we had there, like football, badminton, and basketball. Uh, that actually just prompted me to go and explore a few more events in terms of volunteering on weekends, which I continue to do, which a lot of us did, right? That was the course, that was the aim of it. That yes, we're doing 20 hours, but let's go volunteer at the grassroots level or wherever we get the chance, wherever it
Yeah.
is in Melbourne, and get that experience in. So it was pretty similar to most people. But yes, I was fortunate enough to continue working at a gym somewhere or the other, be it university or a Melbourne Sports Aquatic Center, etc. And then there was a company called Event Workforce. Now,
Right.
Event Workforce was a casual hiring company which catered to a lot of events at that time in Melbourne. And fortunately enough, I got my foot in the door with them pretty early on, and I got my first experience of the AFL at the grand final weekend, which was absolutely mind-boggling for a person who has no clue what AFL is. Uh, right? So it was pretty cool. That experience was very good, and that relationship I created with the event workforce core team was very beneficial to me going forward as well. And till today, I'm lucky enough to say that we're good friends as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the course, like, can you just share like what kind of like the syllabus and the structure? What is your opinion about it? Like, what at that time what we studied? So what is your opinion? What whether it was good enough considering what the industry demands were at that time?
Yeah, I think so because we need to keep in mind also there's a few different parameters. I came as a straight from a bachelor's to a master's student, whereas I know, I think including you and a lot of other batchmates who came with a few years of experience in the industry. But for a person like me, I think it was a great balance of business and sport in terms of our core subjects. And where you're not, let's say someone did our course and didn't want to pursue something in sports, it's fine. You can still pivot away, which was really important in choosing Deakin compared to an Ohio State where the focus was only sport. I wanted to be in a place where the pivot was easily possible because at the end of the day, skills had to be transferable. That is was 101 for me. So in terms of the course structure, I was pretty pleased that even though subjects like a finance or economics was generic to every master's student, and I had done that personally in a bachelor's state. So for me, it was a repetition, but for a lot of people who are doing that course, it was the first time they were ever doing an economics or a finance course, which I am sure at some stage would have been beneficial to their careers. And just the way you think, I think it's a fundamental thing. So, in terms of the core subjects, I was pretty pleased with what we had. I just wished we had a lot more flexibility with the internships on offer because I'm pretty sure you remember we didn't have too many options. We had to go source our own internships, etc.
Yeah.
Whereas today, I see a lot of people studying and who have graduated have done great internships, and the opportunities today are obvious. I would say almost hundredfold what we had. Most people are getting jobs straight out of uni. Also, if you've put in the hard work during that 2 years, which we didn't have, it was a
Right.
very clear
Right.
thing
I
that
agree.
we had to. Yeah, we had to dig in deep to find that first opportunity and then keep striving for that as well because the first opportunity usually wasn't the great. But coming back to the course, athlete management was, I think, a great unit. I was very passionate about it. I think a lot of Southeast Asians who go to Deakin have that perception of doing athlete management. But after I did the course, I my perception almost changed. Like as much as I loved the concept of athlete management, I just thought this is not the first thing I want to do. because it again puts you into a hole in the industry rather than doing the understanding the whole industry as such. So those were takeaways which were great. And then things like digital marketing were absolutely amazing. This was 2015 we're talking about, where digital marketing, it just started off, to be honest.
Right.
Today, I'm sure what they're learning and teaching is a lot better than what we were taught. But whatever we were taught 6, 7 years ago now was absolutely great, just from an understanding point of view of where and how social media and digital marketing is influencing sports culture.
Right. Yeah. Right. Next up, after the course, like when you finished the course, you finished in July 2017, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
So after that, how did you find work?
Sure, I'll continue. I'll again go back to event workforce. So because I was working for 2 years now with event workforce, I was also working with Melbourne Sports Aquatic Center for about 8, 9 months. So I had work luckily, but like all of us, I was striving for that full-time job. So till I was applying, I did about 150 interviews. I still have all my applications saved on my laptop. There's been over 1,000 applications sent, etc. Right? But fortunately enough, the amount of work I was getting through event workforce was broadening my horizon in terms of working at different smaller events. And then I had personally my big breakthrough in November of that year, uh, where I was offered a role. I interviewed, obviously, there was about 20, 30 people with Cricket Australia. It was the Ashes year. And it was a contract role where we had to go at every test venue and basically create a customer service team for outside the stadium, because there was a lot of travelers coming to stadiums. So
Right.
that was a great experience for a 23-year-old to go and lead a team of 20, 30 people at each venue across the country for Cricket Australia. So you become the face of the people. And that was absolutely amazing, which was basically between November and Jan. I worked only for 25 days with Cricket Australia, but my interaction with the core team of CA, the full timers, was all the time. And I started creating relationships with them, obviously. That was absolutely like it was magic, to be honest. From there, I genuinely hoped I would have got a full-time job, but unfortunately, nothing materialized at that time. But fortunately enough, I got selected by the process to work at the Australian Open. From there, this was 2018. And then I worked as an accreditation coordinator there for about 2 months, and through a few chats during meal times and just having conversations with people. One of my seniors was going to go work for the Formula One as in the accreditation role as well. And I interviewed there and got into there as well, which was absolutely amazing as well. Like Formula One, there's a lot of people involved, but there's a very small core team involved. So to be part of that core team was absolutely fascinating. To see the work from within the organization was great. This was about March, and then I knew again I have nothing. And I was looking for that work, full time work. But in the meantime, I still had the gym work at MSAC, where I was working as customer support. I was working whichever event workforce was giving me as a team leader now. But then things happen, right? Like networking is 101. I don't believe in anything else except networking. Even today, even though I'm back in
Yeah.
India,
Hmm.
that I was at the wrap-up party of Formula One, and I got a call from the event workforce guys saying that there's a last-minute roles come up for the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast. Would you be interested for that? So about 20 of us were flown to Gold Coast for about a month and a half, and we were working for the Commonwealth Games, which again was mind-boggling. Like just from my perspective, I never hoped that would happen. I was not even looking at it as an opportunity because it was far-fetched at that stage. So for that to happen, just again get experience, start knowing people in the industry, and there were roles which I didn't even know existed at that stage. Right, this was the first global event I was part of. Yes, an Australian Open or Formula One is global events, but it's still you find 90% of the people were Australians, whereas the Commonwealth Games wasn't that. You had
Right.
people from everywhere. It was fascinating, the scale of it as well. Uh, After that, it was a bit of a lull. I was interviewing for a few companies. I remember I was in Sydney interviewing for a company uh, as a consultant. I'd never done consultancy before, but I was just interviewing for them. Great interview. I loved it. They were looking for an entry level person as well. It was 7 p.m. in Sydney, and I was flying back that day. back to Melbourne as well. And I was having dinner on a food court. I still remember this. And for me, I've told everyone, like, social media, I'm on LinkedIn more than I'm on Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So I was on LinkedIn just scrolling, and I saw a post from a CA employee who I was just following. I'd never connected to this person. And she said, "We're looking for entry level people. Please send me a resume." So I sent my resume through and didn't hope for anything, to be honest, because we know how many of these posts come up, and usually you're not called for. We've done this before. But fortunately, I got a response within the next 1 hour saying, "Can you come and interview tomorrow?" Uh, for a very entry level role. So absolutely fascinated. I was glad I booked my flight that night as well back, and I wasn't stuck in Sydney. So went and gave my interview, and I still remember my biggest hesitation during that interview was that I am flying back to India for a month for a holiday tomorrow. So if I can join only a month later, which fortunately enough, they took really well. Cricket Australia was happy with that, and that's how I got into Cricket Australia. Literally at the base level, where we were 4 or 5 corporate assistants, helping with anything and everything in that building, which happened on 60 Jollymont, which is fascinating for me. Being a cricket nuffy, worked with Cricket Australia, but I was never involved in the office. I'd been to the office a few times, but now this was my workspace every day, and it was absolutely amazing. Uh, within a month or so, I'll be very honest, I was a bit frustrated with the work I was doing. I wasn't My time, according to me, wasn't being utilized, and I spoke to the people who I had connected with 6 months ago in that contract role, saying I can do more. Like, this is not for me. I was told to stay patient, which is not my biggest virtue in terms of getting that growth. And fortunately enough, I was put into the ticketing team. Uh, and from there, the next 3 years were absolutely fascinating. I continued to grow within Cricket Australia, eventually became the state ticketing manager for Victoria, ACT, and Tassie. Having a stadium like MCG and being a ticketing manager there was absolutely fascinating. Having the Ashes, having 2 Indian series, and it was great. Working culture, the people was absolutely fantastic, and I was having the time of my life. And then the pandemic happened, which happened to a lot of us. So it was a really hard time. I was, I think, the last flight back from India, in fact, to land in Australia, because the pandemic was still developing. I have friends who have flown back from Singapore and Dubai back home to India who couldn't make it back. Uh, but I was the last flight in. I actually flew that day just because we had a game in Hobart, Australia, New Zealand ODI. I flew on Friday, Sunday was the match. And I've flown in, I've reached Melbourne, and I've got an email from HR saying, "Listen, it's developing the pandemic, please stay home. You don't need to come, someone else will be going on your behalf." I'm like, great. 24 hours later, there was no spectators, the matches were called off, everything was done. It was a crazy time. I don't know if you were there during that time. Yes.
No, I wasn't actually. Yeah.
Right. It was fascinating. Like, the world just changed like that
Yeah.
for us, right?
Right.
And we were there. Fortunately enough, uh, there was work to be done, even though the series was over, even though the summer of cricket for that season was over. There was a lot of post-season work to be done, and that happened for the next 3-4 months. And in June, I think June, July, we were told that there are going to be redundancies. We can't keep up because Australia was closed for 2 years eventually. It wasn't 6 months or 3 months like a lot of parts of the world. Uh, my role was unfortunately one of those ones that impacted, and it was made redundant in September, October. Uh, Fortunately enough, they did give me a chance to do a different role with the Big Bash team, where I went as a content manager, just liaising with all the 8 franchisees, completely different role. And this again is a testament to them trusting me to take up something which I hadn't done. So a big thank you and shout out to them. So I did that role for the next 5 months, which was fascinating because I'd never been involved from because I was working international cricket, and then to go to Big Bash cricket was absolutely different, fun. Uh, it was crazy. Uh, that role came to an end in Feb was coming to an end. And just through networking again, one of Cricket Australia's principal partners for stadium activations is Kojo Studios Private Limited. Uh, they are one of the best in the business, I would say, in terms of what they do and the people as well. So I went and joined them from March, I'm not sure, March of that year, the next year. worked with them for a year, year and a half, grew in that organization, developed my skills in things I wasn't great at. I didn't even know existed in the sports industry again. Uh, and then a year later, this was November, Jan of last year, uh, I was at the start, in fact, I was thinking about coming back to India, just trying to understand the market. And because it was 7 years in Australia, now it's a long time. And I'm sure like a lot of people go through this, the uncertainty of visas. Luckily, till now it was fine. Everything was working. But with COVID, you're losing your social circle. People are leaving your city. Suddenly, you go from a group of 20 people to 3 to 4 people. You know what's happening around the world. All those factors influenced my decision to come back. So I made the move back from Australia at the start of last year, Jan, and the plan was to just travel. Literally, the whole plan was just travel the world, see the world, go meet people, and that's it. Uh, but I did travel a bit. But again, in March, April, I started freelancing with Kojo because they needed a few extra hands for a new project. So I freelanced for them remotely for 3 to 4 months. And within this time, again, I was in Bombay, fortunately, and I got a call from someone who had worked with 4 years, 3 years ago at the Women's World Cup in Brisbane. And she said, Kunal, I'm working in Qatar and there is a role available as a ticketing assistant ticketing manager. It's a bit different from what we do in Australia, but would you be interested? I said, definitely, let's do it. And again, Qatar was not in my radar at all. For me, 2026 FIFA World Cup was my aim in terms of where my professional growth was going. But then things started clicking, and I went to Qatar in July, August, as an assistant ticketing manager for the next 6 months. So this was last year, which it's magic. Like being a football lover, witnessing a World Cup final, it was fairy tale stuff. Like you couldn't have asked for anything better as a sports nuffy. Like it was absolutely amazing. So 6 months in Qatar was great. Very different working cultures, very different people. For the first time, I worked with a lot of Europeans. Uh, Great exposure for myself in terms of skill development and how people operate around the world. And then I was back in India again in Jan, and looking at the Indian calendar, the obvious one was the Indian Premier League. I wanted to work the IPL. It was the closest event coming up. It is our jewel, right, in the crowd. So I wanted to definitely work in that. So I was networking a lot. Uh, had a few opportunities to get in quickly, but wasn't finding the right role. For me, the right role was more important than what I was getting in terms of my remuneration. I wanted to be exposed brutally to the Indian system because for me, this was like a litmus test of do I want to make it work here or do I want it to work abroad again?
Right.
Fortunately, it's a very big different culture when you've at the age of 21 you've left and you've come back at 28, and I had not worked in India except for a 3 month internship at Adidas. So for me, I didn't know what Indian work culture was. I just heard about it. So for me, that exposure was critical. Uh, Fortunately, I got a chance to work with the Rajasthan Royals. They hired a company called Spark Managing Services for their IPL 3 months, and I was their branding and sponsorship manager for that. So I was based in Jaipur between March and May. Great season, a lot of learnings, completely different working styles, different working culture. I had to adapt everything to what India does. Big learnings for me. I had a diary full of just notes of what I am supposed to do because 3 months is not a long time to change how you make other people work when you are the one who's new to the industry.
Correct.
So it was very heartening to see the number of people who reached out to me when I got this role and saying that we would have loved to be in your position. So I understand how it is to work in an IPL situation. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, even though it was one of my hardest events ever. But yeah, so this has been my 6, 7 years clubbed into 15 minutes or so of storytelling. So
Right. Yeah. So I'll just take you back a bit, since you mentioned you worked at Cricket Australia at various stages. Were you also working there when the sandpaper gate happened?
no, I was the new batch of recruits after that. In fact, I was about 3, 4 months after the sandpaper gate happened. there was a
Yeah.
huge change happening in the organization. Literally from the CEO all the way to the bottom,
Yeah.
everything was being changed. I remember my first few months I was in a suit. I had to go into suits, formals, and then there was a change of how Cricket Australia is going to be treating their employees, and this all stemmed from how the players are being spoken to as well. So it was an overall organizational change. So I never got to actually fully feel what CA was before that because the
Hmm.
change was already starting to happen. Like we had the youngest CEO who was at 28, James Sutherland, who was there for over 20 years. And then the change which happened after that obviously was huge because there was a lot of people who've been there for 15 years, 5 years, 8 years. So it was a change for everyone. But yeah.
Having worked in the industry for almost 8 years, I guess, so what lessons have you learned and what advice would you give to people who are trying to build a career in the sports industry?
A couple of really important things, Vijay. One would be never think that you know everything and continue to learn. And I think that's one of the most important things people forget in every aspect. I think it happens to me, it happens to everyone, where you've started something, you've done really well in that role for a couple of years, and suddenly you think you know everything. And eventually, time catches up to you, and within a year, you start feeling, oh man, someone's probably better than me now, or things are going ahead of me. That the new practices which you introduce and you don't know about it. So for me, the 101 would be continue learning. If you think your surroundings is not teaching you new things, expand, go meet new people. Today, the world is a very small place. Reach out to people on LinkedIn, uh, go listen to podcasts, etc. I think it's a great way to get to know more people. And one thing which people shy away from is the older we get, we don't want to do something new. I think I've been the opposite, and it's backfired on me also. Let's be honest. Like it would have been very great for me to do 7 years of only ticketing, but I haven't done that. If you go through my profile, I've done various roles in the industry. So a lot of people look at me and say, "Why have we done so many different things?" But at the same time, today I know I can walk into any role and make it my own because of that experience again. So
Right.
that's really important. Be humble enough to take a back step in your career in terms of a position, uh, if it's letting you grow. So I think that's one big thing. Second would be just don't be afraid. Like people get scared. I think everyone has different to make those hard decisions, right? Like to leave Australia after 7 years was a huge decision. A lot of people still tell me like if you stuck for about 2 more months, Australia opened up after that. Uh, I'm like, great, yeah, I'm sure it did. I would have been there, but I probably wouldn't have done the FIFA World Cup then because I wouldn't have
Right.
been looking for work, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's always pros and cons. Make the decision. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but don't be afraid. Today I'm back in India. Uh, let's see how it goes. I've done my first event. I don't know what the path holds for me. I tell this to a lot of people. Being an Indian, I don't know people in India. People don't know me. I can go back to Australia, and I'm pretty confident within a few weeks I can land a job because my network is better there compared to the Indian market today.
Right.
But that's the challenge at where I am today. So just don't be afraid. Just do what you think is right, and then figure it out. Because we people in the industry, we're working with a passion, right? We're fortunate enough
Right.
to still work in this industry. So just do what you think is right for yourself, and then go from there.
Right. Nice one. And yeah, lastly, what's ahead for you? Have you planned anything like you want to stay in India, you want to explore some other country now? What's on your mind?
Yeah, there's a few things to be honest. I'm in that confused state of mind to be honest, where I'm looking at a few different things. I'm looking next year is a big year for sports. You've got the Olympics and you've got the Euros in France and Germany, respectively. So I'm hoping even if I can do either one of them, that will be absolutely amazing. At the same time, continue to understand the Indian market a bit better, meet people here. That's why I've come to Mumbai. I've left Bangalore for a bit, come to Mumbai, just meeting people here and take it a day at a time. I'm happy to continue in this freelance world now, which I've been doing for the last 18 months. But at the same time, again, being open, right? That's what I spoke about opportunities. If that right opportunity comes where I can see myself settle into a full time role, I'll obviously do that as well because I have done both now. So I started after graduation as a freelancer, working multiple things. then went into 4 years or 5 years of full-time work, 4 years of full-time work, and now again I'm back into the freelance world. Right? I've seen both. There are pros and cons of both, and at this stage, I want to grow. I want to learn new skills. I want to meet people from around the world, including India as well. So yeah, it's a very mixed bag. I don't know exactly what my next step is. I'm just trying to put a few stones into place, and wherever the path leads, I'll go towards that.
And thank you for coming on my show, and all the best for it.
Thank you so much for having me, Vijeet. And whoever listens to this, please reach out to as many people as you can. Continue to grow. And thanks again for having me, buddy. And all the best with this. I can't wait to hear everyone else from 17, 18 as well. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, I'm trying to get in touch with all of them and trying to get the recording done. Yeah. So let's see how it goes. So that's all for this episode. If you liked the video, if you found it useful, do like and share. It will help me in producing more of such content, and do subscribe to the channel for more videos. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode.